So what is the White House plan for Syria? Defeat ISIS, remove Assad? According to White House National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, it's both.
There has to be a degree of simultaneous activity as well as a sequencing of the defeat of ISIS first. What you have in Syria is a very destructive cycle of violence perpetuated by ISIS, obviously, but also by this regime and their Iranian and Russian sponsors.
But today the White House said the airstrikes were to prevent the spread of chemical weapons. And now Russia and Iran are saying that they will retaliate if the U.S. continues strikes on the Assad regime. So are we getting in over our head here? Dr. Ron Paul joins me. He's the host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Welcome back, Dr. Paul.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So obviously, someone who gasses their own people and kills babies is a bad person. I think we can all universally agree on that. But the question really is, when and how does the U.S. get involved?
Well, certainly not under fake news, and I think a lot of fake news is floating around because nobody's proven anything about who gassed whom. And of course, in 2013, they were claiming that Assad gassed his own people, and it turns out, as the dust settled, the UN comes up with a report and said it was the rebels that had the gas. So I haven't bought into this, but the whole thing is intervention is intervention. Intervention is bad if it's not done, for our national defense. But the president gives us the answer. He says our vital national security interests prompted him to do this, and this was very necessary. I think the only interest that's been involved here is to prop up the profits of the military-industrial complex. That's what they think that's what they think national security interests are all about. But no, we don't need to be in there. It's a mess. Just remember, ISIS and Al-Qaeda were virtually out of there until we define our policy as Assad has to go under Obama. Things have just totally deteriorated since then, but they never mentioned that. They just mentioned, Assad, does this and that, and he probably far from a saint.
I think I disagree with you about the idea that Assad wouldn't gas his own people. I think he's a horrible person. He hates freedom, and he would kill and murder his own people to further his own grasp on power. That's what I think about that, but I also agree with you that getting further into the Middle East, and also there is no end game. When people try and give us these pat, oversimplified statements of comfort that somehow this is the only thing we're going to do and then we're going to get out, and then the next business day, essentially what you hear is we're going to get rid of Assad and we're also going to get rid of ISIS. I mean, those are massive undertakings that at some point require congressional consent and a new AUMF. If you were still in Congress, what would you say to the president about that?
I would say get out, get them, bring them home, and as soon as possible, because we don't have any business being there. If we're concerned about killing people, what about the 500,000 kids that were supposed to have been killed 10 years of bombing in Iraq? And Albright says, oh, well, if that's the price we have to pay, that's the price we have to pay. So it has nothing to do with killing. It has to do with war propaganda and sinister forces that like war, and that's the neoconservative movement. So the neoconservatives politically are winning, but I believe the American people are still with us who believe that this war is absolutely unnecessary. You say he's a monster. Maybe so. But I don't think he's exactly what they portray him to be. Saddam Hussein was a monster, too. But he didn't have weapons of mass destruction. This is war propaganda, and this is making excuses to get involved in things that we shouldn't be involved in.
Even if it's not war propaganda, I will agree with you that deposing these people leaves vacuums that tend to be much worse. And instead of getting resolved, and certainly not to the benefit of our country or the region as a whole. And, regardless of how you specifically make the case, it's almost impossible to make a strong argument that we should continue any incursions in the Middle East, whether it be Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, or Libya. Dr. Paul, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead. Last word. Go ahead.
Well, no, I say you're right, and I approach it constitutionally and morally, and we shouldn't be involved. And you mentioned a few reasons, for practical reasons, we shouldn't be involved, because it really doesn't accomplish anything. What have we accomplished in 15 years of constant war in the Middle East? And adding another war doesn't help us at all. So I would say practically, morally, and constitutionally, we ought not to be there. And the sooner we wake up, the better off the whole world will be.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul. Appreciate it.